Hello, everybody, and welcome to Asgard. And so I indeed told you guys that I'd be doing some Blu-ray reviews because I've been sent a few from NVD and Visual. I'm still trying to get all the names figured out and everything, but seriously, thank you so much for sending me these movies to review. And the first one that I want to review is actually an Arrow video release. This is the first Arrow video release that I've ever had, and also the first Arrow video release that I've ever seen. For anyone that doesn't know what Arrow video is, they essentially are something like Criterion, where they are able to create these really high quality productions. Be able to take, they're a little bit more, I would say, obscure than Criterion tends to be. I think Criterion tends to be like the more higher end type of films, the higher end independent scenes, where Arrow Video seems to try and go after those lower budget films that are still really, really good, but at the same time are also just not really as well known as some of the others. And so the one that I'm going to be reviewing today is In the Aftermath. So In the Aftermath is a fantastic Arrow Video release. And so I'm just going to first talk about this picture quality of it, which is stunning in HD. Stunning in the 1080p. It's a very good 2K transfer from a 35mm print, and it's done very well. The audio transfer is also top notch, and I will say this much, that I think that not having as good of a transfer as it did for this release, which they definitely had in this release, I think would have been to its downfall, because I think that the audio itself probably would have been suffering from time to time, because it is sometimes hard to hear them, because in the very beginning some of the main actors are talking behind gas masks, and because of the fact that they're able to basically really give us the best quality, the best version of that audio, really does help overall with the film itself. For those that don't know anything about In the Aftermath actually is an interesting case, because it does what many films did in the past, which is it repurposes old footage from a previous film. And so in this case, it was Angel's Egg, which is actually from the same director that did Ghost in the Shell back in 1995. And so the first thing he did, or one of the first things that he did, was 1985's Angel's Egg, which is very interesting. It's also very elusive and very complicated. And so what they were able to do is they were able to buy the rights to that film, which was a feature-length film about 70 minutes long. And obviously there were some things, though, that needed to be added in. There were some things that, kind of left the film overall just, asking a lot of questions without a lot of answers. And so what they decided to do was they decided to film certain shots in America and actually put those scenes in alongside with the animation. And so you actually get to see most of Angel's Egg, or I would say at least major parts of Angel's Egg, without any cuts in them whatsoever. But then they're intertwined randomly with these live action scenes of essentially this post-apocalyptic world. And so that's why it is indeed called In the Aftermath, where this guy all of a sudden starts to see this little girl character, and he doesn't really know what she's all about, and you find out a little bit more about her from the anime scenes that they have. They actually do have a live action little actress that actually ends up playing the person too, because they have this really cool transition where they have the actual anime version of the character that transitions into the live action person. And the fact that this is a film back from the 1980s, this film itself was made in, I believe, was 1988. The fact that they were able to go back and they were able to do this type of thing was truly amazing, because they honestly were not trying to make a lot of money off of it. They were just trying to make some profit off of it. Basically, what you would have with all these companies, that they would end up going and buying all the rights to these really cheap animes or live actions. The same thing actually happened with Godzilla. So a lot of the American versions of Godzilla that we ended up getting were studios that actually bought the rights to some of the visuals of it and repurposed them, put in American actors, put in American cutscenes. I think anyone that's from my generation, from when we grew up in the 90s with things like Power Rangers, they did the same thing, right? So Power Rangers actually used, all of the fighting sequences, all of the Zords, all that stuff was from an original show that was, shot in Japan and showed in Japan. And then they cut in American sequences into it to try and make it work. And it actually worked pretty seamlessly, I would argue. Though the dubbing in my later years, especially for characters like Rita Repulsa, definitely weren't nearly as good as I thought they were when I was a kid. It does something similar to that in this film, in the Aftermath. And so the actual, the video quality is fantastic. The audio quality is fantastic too. This is a very good transfer. Also, they have a lot of other special, they have a lot of special editions, rather special content on this release as well, including interviews with the lead actor in the film. They have an interview with one of the persons that worked for the company at the time as the editor, and also they were able to interview kind of like this film historian who knew a lot about the repurposing. And so all of those things are available on this release from Arrow Video. So have you ever heard about this? Have you ever heard of Angel's Egg? Do you have a lot of thoughts about the fact that they repurposed an anime? That was one of the really cool things that the historian in the special features was talking about was the fact that a lot of people who are fans of anime hate when, of course, anime ends up being repurposed in this way. But I think that the way that they do it is very respectful in this film. I think the way that they do it is overall, it works. I don't think it takes away anything from it. Again, from someone that probably would never have watched the anime, because the anime, they even admit it in the film, that, or at least in the special features, that it was a very obscure and very, not really giving a straight meaning, which again, I know that there are people out there that like those types of films. And I would say that even in the aftermath, is definitely not nearly as straightforward as some other films that I tend to like. This is definitely more of an avant-garde type film, at least for me. It's more of an art house, I guess, is the more accurate sense. It's more of an art house type film, at least probably seen in that lens or through that lens nowadays. But I will say, I actually pretty much enjoyed it. I thought that the visuals were great. I thought that the anime itself, of course, the hand-drawn animation looked great. I thought that, obviously the 2K transfer of the 35 millimeter print was, really great. You could definitely see some grain though. Obviously, because this is an older film, this was a film that went straight to video. This was not a film that got a theatrical release. And so I'm sure that it was a little bit harder to find this actual 35 millimeter print and not just some videotape prints. And so they did a very good job transferring it, though they definitely do have some dust on the print itself. And I'm wondering how much of it, because it was more present in the anime footage than not. So I'm wondering if the grain itself came from the anime print they ended up using for the film and not the official print that they used for the film itself. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Did you ever see this film? Have you ever heard of this film before? Is this something that would make interest you? Overall, if I had to give it a grade, I'd give it a solid B. It's not a film that I think that I'm ever going to watch, over and over again. It's a film that I might actually introduce to some of my friends that I know that are a fan of anime and are a fan of that type of hand-drawn animation. My wife might actually like those aspects of the film itself. But I think that the overall addition of the overall addition of the live action sequences to this film, adding more to the plot, adding more to the story, and really helping, I think, make more sense of the anime itself, is something that's very beneficial to someone like me that maybe doesn't understand the animes nearly as much. But also, too, it does it in, I think, a very respectful way. It gives total credit to the person. It does not try and act as if they own the footage or that it's completely of their own. It makes it very clear that the footage from the anime or the animated footage in the film comes directly from Angel's Egg, and it makes it very clear to point that out in the process. So anyway, let me know your thoughts about this. Anything else, please make sure you go to Arrow Video. Again, Arrow Video. This is an Arrow Video release, and again, it's a very, very good edition. So if that sounds very interesting to you, if that's something that you think that you might want to watch, go ahead and pick yourself up a copy. And once again, huge shout out to the group that sent this to me. Seriously, thank you so much. And I cannot wait to review more of the films, and I plan to try and do maybe a together complete conglomerated film or video on all the films that I was sent, but I definitely do still have some movies to get through, but I'm glad to have gotten started on that list. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and all the things that we talked about in today's video. If you like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps me out a lot, and again, this is a very good addition, and I'm glad to finally own an Arrow Video release. So thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.